about it.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Cousins Talk. And I'm J'Nicole
I'm Misael Bay, aka Warlock Asylum,
and we're cousins.
and we're cousins. That's right.
Um, we are having our first show, and so we're going to stumble through this together and give you guys a brief introduction of who we are and the intentions that we want to have for our show. Today, I am, um, oh my God, I'm 37 years old,
Wow.
and I live on the West Coast, and I am a nonprofit professional who is embarking on new areas of life because I'm about to be an empty nester. And my goal for our show is to um, have the people's perspective on life, current events, and whatever is creative and fun that will cause us to come together as a people. Misael?
Well, that's amazing. Hi, I'm Misael Bay. I'm a writer, I'm a spiritualist, I'm a music reviewer. I live in New York City. Um, have a ton of life experience, involved in many different things, and I have some upcoming projects which are very exciting. And just trying to share information and learn like everyone else in this day-to-day experience that we're having presently. So Janine is not only a cousin, she's a cousin on my mother's and father's side. So she's like a sister, in that sense. So it's exciting to work with. I think out of all the people I've worked with, this is probably one of the most exciting experiences I had, to work with family and to talk and communicate with someone who's very understanding. I can be open with, and not really deal with the tribal judgments that sometimes we encounter when dealing with, you know, family. So this could be encouraging for everybody in the sense that family can talk and open up about a lot of different things, and also to learn from each other and our perspectives of the world, and to learn from our universal human family.
Definitely. And I concur. I feel that oftentimes you don't always have someone you can connect to on every areas of your life. I know on my spiritual journey, there was a lot of times where I felt lonely and didn't really know how to navigate the waters. And so finding a cousin who also has taken a spiritual journey himself was something that allowed me to just grow by just knowing that, because I can bounce ideas and references off of him. So we do encourage networking within the family and
Yes,
networking with
indeed.
people close to you. And family doesn't always mean blood. Sometimes we create our families, and
That's true.
you can always do that and have the same type of reaction, because I have a very healthy and wonderful circle of family that has no blood relation.
Wow. Yeah, absolutely. That's how things are today. And it's good in a way, because it allows us to make friendships and network with people of similar interests and create long-lasting bonds. So that's beautiful. And now that we have the convenience of the technology of the internet, of Zoom, I mean, the sky is the limit. And the world's getting much smaller. So we definitely want to take advantage of that to make our dreams a reality, and to, paste our memory, you know, for future generations so that they can benefit from some of the things that we're learning today.
Indeed. So I would like to start off by asking you a few questions so that everyone can get to know you, Messiah.
Sure.
Um, I would like for you to just give us a short um, summary of your journey through hip hop, spirituality, and writing.
Wow. It starts off with being a Libra. That's the way it starts off at, right? So from there, I grew up in Long Island, which is a more conservative part of this compared to city life that I'm living today. But it's a lot. It's very progressive in its own way, and I think from youth I always enjoyed music. I remember, I think from my junior high school graduation, no, actually my grade school graduation into junior high school, my mother bought me a keyboard. It was a chord. It was my first keyboard I ever had. My father, he worked as a sanitation worker, and he would bring home all sorts of stuff every day. He was like a rock. He would bring home stuff every single day. So he had a couple of guitars. My older brother played.
Pause. For us millennials, please explain rock.
Oh, Rock is this guy who worked for the sanitation department and would bring home stuff daily. You know what I'm saying? So my father, when he came to New York, he got a job ultimately in a very rich community, actually probably one of the richest suburbs in America. And stuff these people were throwing away was like it was ready-made material. Sometimes you even find like gold bracelets in the garbage. So um, so anytime we would ask our parents for something, we would, if we worked for it, we could get it. But he would normally find something around the same time, so we wound up having like two things. Like I remember, not to digress too much, but my mother, I asked her like, look, can I get this 5-speed Apollo Ross bike because that was the big thing, coming up in grade school. So the day that she bought it, literally, my father pulled up with a yellow Swin that he had found on his route with a banana seat and everything. A 3-speed Swin. So it was always like this craziness. So today, I don't really like a whole bunch of stuff. You know what I'm saying? I have a whole bunch of stuff, but I don't like having a whole bunch of stuff in the house because it's just, my mother used to always complain about like the clutter. It'll be like a lot of
Mhm.
nice stuff, but it's a little twisted in that sense. So anyway, that was that sort of thing. So he would bring home musical instruments sometime, and I think the music side came a lot from my mother because she wrote music at a young age, and some of her music was discovered in the rock and roll era. And like so many artists, it was ripped off. She never got any money for her music, and she wrote a couple of tracks that made it to like the top 100. You know what I'm saying? So like her um, passion for music, and this happened between the ages of like 13 for her, and I guess like
Mhm.
like late in her teens till she got married. She just kind of just gave it up and just put her energy into her family. You know what I'm saying? So when I got to be a teenager, I think I was not even a teenager. I might have been, well, I was a teenager, probably like around 13 or 14. I had developed a group with some young guys that I grew up with, and we had gotten a record contract right at a young age. This was like the new edition era, and we got stopped going into Sam Ash, and this lady was like, "Man, 4 young men, black men, going into the music store. Like, what are y'all doing?" Because we had matching like gear on, so people knew that we were affiliated with each other. And she pulled us over to the side, and we were good to go. We were like ready to sign this contract, whatever. So finally, we brought my parents over, and all of us had to bring our parents over, obviously, because we were under 18. And this woman, all of our parents was like into Jehovah Witness religion, and this woman
Mhm.
wasn't. So they had like certain contentions because they didn't want us around certain atmospheres and everything. So finally, we get down to the basis of the contract, and we're like, yeah, no, we ain't gonna be doing nothing crazy. We're just trying to make music. And this woman started talking about she saw Jesus in her room, in a vision. And if it just like that's a conversation that I think people of that faith, the JW faith, it just turned everything off. And so a lot of my friends after that, they start living double lives and stuff. And then, eventually, because they were like, look, man, we can't do what we want to do over this nonsense. So, they just lived however they were living. And then eventually, I kind of moved on from that paradigm. And one of the things I really want to do was pursue music. I didn't have that holding me back now. So I developed a group with a good friend of mine, and we made a little bit of music history. We was one of the first. We was the first rap group actually to perform in a famous jazz spot during the 90s and 80s and 70s called Sweetwaters. It later became known as Honeysuckle West. We performed there. We performed at Hofstra University in front of 5,000 people. That was kind of crazy. And we were doing good stuff. I think the work was getting to its height as we were starting to break apart a little bit. You know, a lot of it had to do with our manager, you know, at the time. Um, we knew like we was around a lot of people, for example, who signed Mary J. Blige and Faith Evans under the same managerial contracts before they became discovered. We was around like those circles and stuff like that. So actually we opened up for Miss Jones in one show and stuff like that, you know what I'm saying? As you know, in the hip hop thing. So, you know, and I look back upon it, we was kind of in the thick of it, but our management was a little bit like they were too safe, you know, so they didn't take the risks that need to be taken. You talking about the 90s, you know what I'm saying? That was like a bullet out of a gun that decade. So, you know, it just didn't happen in that era. But it gave me a good background in music, you know what I'm saying? And it gave me a little bit of stage experience. From that, I started getting into like spoken word and stuff like that, the poetry community. And I think one of the ideas that I had there was to kind of take, you know, I noticed a lot of these guys would just be using conga drums and jazz measurements, you know, and it was like, yo, why can't we do the same thing over hip hop measurements? It's still about timing, you know, saying like the free verse to go in and to come out and that sort of thing. So, you know, I started moving around New York City, and you know, I got to make a lot of strong friendships with a lot of the premier poets. I think once you go in the poetry community, you never really come out of it, you know, like you have such strong ties and friendships and stuff, and a lot of the people that will later premiere on Def Poetry Jam. I mean, I had the opportunity to perform at that. I mean, I knew the people who produced and stuff. I just, my head just wasn't there, you know, at the time. My thing was just like, yo, let's bring it to the people. You know what I'm saying? A lot of times you will go to a venue and you may find, unless you had your own show, you know, like a one man or one woman show, you go to a spoken word venue and you'll find like about 30 poets trying to get on stage in the same room. So obviously, when you're doing your work, it's in front of other poets. And I thought, like, you know, let me do something just in front of people. That's where I was headed at. So I started working on an electronic album, like what now is called EDM, right? And I met a friend of mine who was an engineer. We got to be real good friends. I was actually in his wedding, and this dude, his history was crazy. You know, like when he graduated college, his degree was given to him. Certificate was given to him by George Martin, the producer of the Beatles. You know, he got a couple of plaques for some of the engineering work he's done and things of that nature. So we start doing stuff together, and from there, we really kind of made a strong name for ourselves, Warlock Asylum. And that name kind of came, although it's like I'm kind of known as a spiritualist for that name, but it kind of came as a group name in a dream. Like I kind of saw something like something heavy metal type of name. You know what I'm saying? Like something rugged. I never really cared for like stuff that was too soft and quaint. So I wanted something like rugged, you know what I'm saying? So like Warlock Asylum just seemed like it was just iron, like steel, like Judas Priest, Metallica, you know, but it didn't really have anything to do with that music, but it was rugged, you know, like a rugged name. So um, you know, eventually, you know, we got to where we needed to get to. I had met Kachi, you know, along the way, and from there we got into Webster Hall. You know what I'm saying? Which is a huge venue out here. We played at Webster Hall. We played with a couple of really good acts. Fast Air was there from Cannabis Ox. Like, you know, it was really a good show. And me and Steve from Warlock Asylum, we played a lot of other different venues, and our group ranking in the country at one time was 200th. And this includes sign acts like Kanye West. Like we were still ahead of them as far as band performance on stage. The stage performance, because what started happening was Steve, since he was an engineer, the guy I played with, he had a real good ear for music. I was coming more from like a hip hop producer's atmosphere, but I played music, as I mentioned earlier, as a youth. But he
Mm.
played more regularly. So what happened was he would get players to play on top of the backing tracks. And people in the arenas would just be like blown away. So the name easily caught up. And then at the same time as this was going on, I was writing a lot of stuff about alchemy and spirituality. So the name was constantly being pushed out of there. So when someone's looking for the name for the music, even now, someone Googles Warlock Asylum, you will find like at least at minimum like 10 to 12 to 30 um, Google search engine pages. You know what I'm saying? So it was getting like, and I wasn't even thinking about it. I was just burning rubber because at the time that this was going on, I think the height of it was like around 2011. Blogging wasn't even that serious at that time, and I was taking a lot of the steps that today people outline that bloggers should take. You understand what I'm saying? So I was just doing it just to try to get certain things out there. I wasn't really concerned about numbers of a blog or whatever, like that sort of thing. So, and that's how that worked on the musical end. Then eventually, to kind of run it down a little bit, uh, I didn't really like, my whole thing was just to perfect myself as a producer and musician. The lyrical stuff, after a while, it just became if I needed to tell a story. But once I started getting into more instrumental sound, I remember listening to some of the rap artists. I'm not going to put them on the spot, but and I was like, man, I mean, people actually listen to the same voice for 12 songs. You know what I mean? Like, how can someone do that? You know what I'm saying? 'Cause I know for me, I was just tired of it. So I want to hear instruments. I want to hear music. And I started learning how to create, like really get into making music. I want to show people I know how to make music, real music. So the last production was the Nuyorican jazz experience. You know what I'm saying? Because I used to listen to a lot of music out of the Nuyorican. I felt that was a rich music that never counterfeited itself. You know what I'm saying? Like to
Mm.
the commercial industry. And like any musician, I think the two greatest forms of music is jazz and classical. I think any musician, whether they're a rock and roll musician or hip hop artist, they understand what they're dealing with, but in their life, if they could perfect the work of that stature, that would be great. And just to be able to do that was like, man, how could I top that one? You know what I'm saying? So,
Right.
and that's a reflection on the musical career so far.
Okay, and then now well, for a while, you've also been doing write-ups on independent artists and
Yeah.
like people to watch out for type articles. How
hmm
did you come about doing that?
The music reviews. Well, what happened was I was writing a lot about um, Mesopotamian spirituality because that was the first course I took. Like a lot of people were involved in Santeria, Ifa, who was involved with like more shamanic arts, let me just say, in lack of a better word. And so I felt like, you know what, I had always have been called to that, you know what I'm saying? And it helped answer like a lot of questions. So the thing about it was that unfortunately, and I'm going to talk about this one day in a future article, maybe we could talk about this in a future show. When you talk about the Sumerian deities, the Anunnaki, and all that sort of stuff, a lot of times they're demonized because they're the ancestors of Black people. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
They're demonized because of that. Like they're aliens and they're this and that. And I was like, man, why that happen? And it came across a quote by Malcolm X when he was asked, how could you say these people are original living in Mesopotamia? He said, haven't you ever heard of the Sumerians? So when I started
Mhm.
pursuing it on an academic level, that was academia. But when you start getting involved in it on a spiritual level, those things speak to you in a way that the researcher can't understand. So originally, my blog was just to set certain records straight versus a template that we was using at the time to
Mhm.
access the Sumerian energy at that time. And so I wanted to keep it as an open journal because there was so much controversy about what Sumer was and everything. And when you really literally look at it and read it, it's a pure form of spirituality. But a lot of people, because it's one of the oldest, perhaps the oldest civilizations that are recorded today, um, then everyone has to fit Sumer into their scheme. You understand what I'm saying? Because it's that old, so they have to fit it into that scheme. Okay, so now after a while, I had maybe wrote about 5,000 articles on this topic in 4 years, 4 to 5 years. It was
Okay.
to the point where medical authorities were starting to come, people from overseas who were like rock stars, they would come over and have conversations about this sort of thing. It was getting kind of big. It was starting to, get mentioned in magazines and stuff like that. And,
Right.
at the time I was just like, whatever. But I also noticed once again, because of the emphasis that's wrongly placed on Suma,
Mhm.
it would also attract a lot of weirdos, a lot of people, like that sort of thing. So I was like, you know what, I'm gonna angle this page differently, and I start writing music reviews, and then I hooked up with some promoters, and they were like, hey man, we'll pay you to write, some of our artists or whatever, and be honest and be clear, like people from magazines get paid to write what they're doing, so you should get compensated for, and so that became a whole other practice. And musically it helped me because in a given day, like for example today before we had this interview, I must have did like 7 reviews. You know what I'm saying? Where I have to sit down and listen to people's music and, write it up. And then I had to learn how to not write as if I'm a research writer. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
Because I have to think about the time I'm given versus the compensation I'm given. You know what I'm saying? To make it like really kind of work. You know what I'm saying? But the good thing is I could do something that I don't have to step out the house and be at home. That sort of thing. So that's really good.
Especially now during
Yeah.
lockdown
Yeah.
and COVID and
Yeah.
people
Yeah.
coughing and spitting on people,
Yeah.
Karens.
So that was huge. But I mean, I'm very appreciative of it. I've met like a lot of beautiful people. It's opened the doors for so much other activity. Yeah, speaking about writing in the blog, because I should get into this, because it's something that people may have questioned, is in the expansion of that, I was watching a show one day about porn stars and their life expectancy.
Oh, I remember that article.
Yeah. And for a lot of people, like, yo, this is kind of edgy, you know what I'm saying? But you know what? When I looked at the rate and the people life expectancy is like 35 years, I was like, yo, let me try to make a medium because these are beautiful people. They just, some of them have certain things going on, and some of them, whatever the case may be. Um, and so, unfortunately, I was able to kind of make some contact with one manager, female manager, because it's different when you talk about male management, named
Mhm.
Tanya Tate, who was a big adult model. Now she's more of like an older, mature adult model, but at one time she was huge, like on the covers of newspapers in Europe and stuff.
Maybe one day we can have her come and do an interview with
That
us.
would be great. Yeah, that would be
We can
great.
talk about some of those topics.
Yeah, and right now we're planning to do another project that is not centered on adult entertainment, but it's very exciting. I don't want to let the cat out of the bag on that one, but she has a big clientele of people that she works with, and a lot of her artists, her being a woman, she give a lot of fair deals to. Um, so I've interviewed a lot of her clients and stuff like that. People can see that on the writing page, and I put it on the caption of beautiful people to kind of get into their personal life without so much emphasis on the sex and the eroticism, and in some ways to work to let people know that, like, yo, we care. You're a person, you're an individual too. You know what I'm saying? So, 'cause I know that life could be crazy. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But that was one of the things that I thought might be good to cover since we were on the topic of writing. You know.
No, definitely. I think that being able to show the human side of the adult business would be something that um, very unique, even if like I said, we did it here and bring back to life and readdress some of your articles that you've written in the past, because there is a stigma that's attached to it.
Yeah, definitely.
And oftentimes these people are well educated and they have wonderful stories and they have beautiful families. And, they're just judged that they are in this adult industry, film industry, and then they are treated like they're beneath everyone else because they participate in that. And it's just a legal stream of income. And so I would love to tackle that subject at some point,
Yeah.
um, and bring it to YouTube. Like,
Yeah.
I would find it interesting
Yeah.
to learn, because, the furthest I know is I have people in my life who have been strippers.
Hmm.
And, if they went down the dark side on that route, I don't know. But, for me, that's all I really know.
Yeah.
And as far as going to the adult um, film industry side, I don't know anyone in that route. And so it would be easy for me to pass judgment on them, because I'll feel like, maybe I haven't done that and
Yeah.
I've done this with my life and here you go doing this.
Yeah.
So um, I don't want to be those kind of people, because I want to be able to judge people by, who they present themselves to be when upon my meeting them. And
Yeah.
so
I think
maybe we could bring a different light.
yeah. It's a lot of different people in that world, and for different reasons. Some people are in that world because they truly enjoy sex, like at that rate. Some
Hmm.
people it's because their curiosity led them in there. They're nerds trying to finish medical school, and it just became bigger than what they thought it would be. Some
Hmm.
people are on the stripper path and stuff. I mean, I think it's a difficult life to live on different levels, but for some people who find it their resolve, what I'm saying, they're able to make it happen. What I'm saying. I mean, I've met different grades of people, and I can tell what's what. What I'm saying, at least on the surface. I mean, I'm not deep into that world, but it was something that spawned out of my curiosity, and also out of there was an incident where was this lady named Alicia Tyler. She was a black porn star, and
Hmm.
maybe like 30 years old or whatever. And she was a very attractive lady. I mean, amongst the guys, he was like, man, that lady, she's really carrying or whatever, that sort of thing. So I would check her out or whatever, and I say, man, what happened to this lady? And then one day, I don't know, I was on the internet and I saw something, and it led me into another article, and it was a forum, and the woman had died. They didn't give no reason why, but she was a mother.
Hmm.
And the way these guys was talking about her, I mean, it was like, man, that's someone's mom. And that's what really kind of, spurred, the desire on, because here these guys are, they're probably, when she was alive, freaking off to her imagery. You know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
And then you're going to put the lady under the ground to make yourself feel good. And this woman's a mother. You know what I'm saying? So
Her children are still here to see that.
yeah, yeah. So I thought that wasn't cool. And even like they say there's an old saying that there's things that men can do that women can't do, and you kind of see that because the world glorifies the drug dealer. There's a whole industry that's above the X world where the drug dealer is glorified. You know what I'm saying? Here it's another situation where it's not really violence that's being pursued, but just sex. And these women are thrown into the garbage. My personal opinion, and I've written about this on my blog page, why artists of that nature um, do return to the essence at a quicker rate is because when you have so many people focusing on you sexually, that energy alone is enough to change your life. You understand what I'm saying? So unless you know how to circulate that energy that's being directed to you or reconstruct it, you know what I'm saying? It can definitely change your life and your mental, at a very fast rate, you know.
Right.
So, and that's basically that in that world. I kind of, I don't think that's a permanent thing, as far as I'm concerned, as far as my career is concerned. But I did want to spend, like set up something where people like that, they can feel some recluse. And to be honest with you, I think things are evolving like that anyway, because when I was young, it was kind of interesting because you would see ads to movies in back of papers like the New York Post or the Daily News, right? And now you don't really see that, but you do see, you know, um, known adult models on news shows, on talk shows, on reality shows. So maybe, those worlds are emerging.
Hmm.
We'll see. You know what I'm saying? I just think that. I mean, I understand, what people can stand at different ways of looking at it, but I just think that a person shouldn't be abused because of what they're dealing with. You know what I'm saying? So
Most definitely.
yeah.
So with bringing things to like some current events, um, how has the quarantine been for you?
Quarantine's been interesting. I mean, in the past couple of years, I've been kind of an indoor person anyway. You know what I'm saying? So, to be inside and to be able to work inside and to, you know, do whatever, um, that's cool. That doesn't bother me so much, except for my son, because he didn't go out for a long time. He was inside the house. But
Mm-hmm.
I think in the beginning I kind of had to turn the news off because it was just getting
Mm-hmm.
too wild every day. And then living in New York City, where the brunt of everything was going on at, and some days my job would get the days that we did go in would give us car service, and then you're concerned, about the service, and eventually I had to start booking regular drivers because I didn't want to deal with a climate of too many people because these people could be taking all
Right.
sorts of people, that sort of thing. So it was real nervous. Um, it was real sort of an anxious like energy, what's going to happen, and people was expecting a vaccine overnight. I mean, when I look back upon it, that's just like almost impossible.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if there will ever be a vaccine because of Spanish influenza. There was never one produced. People just gained the antibodies or they just went to the ground.
Right.
So, it's been interesting. I mean, normally in the circumstances with time like that, I would have produced something, but this time around, I've just been taking my time as far as like how I proceed about things. And some levels I've been sort of like sitting down and just educating myself, taking a couple of courses online. You know what I'm saying? Because I figured, like, you give out so much, sometimes you just need to kind of really study, you know what I'm saying, what you
Mm-hmm.
have done, and also learn from other people.
Yes. Well, quarantine for me has been some similar. My job had us working from home like the week after everything
Wow.
blew up. They're just like work from home. Working from home was something that I have been nagging my boss about for a really long time. And I was sneaking and doing, and
Hmm.
now I get to do it every day.
No good.
Now, oddly enough, I felt like I was more productive when I was sneaking to be home and work than being allowed to be home and work.
Mm,
I get my work done, but I do feel like my transition from work to home is a lot more casual, and I snack a lot more. And um,
definitely.
yeah, I'm starting to look like I've been snacking. And so I just have to come up with a new regimen of like, what's my new workout regimen going to be?
Yeah,
I showed you I put a gym in the garage. So it's time to utilize the gym.
yeah, yeah.
And I just signed up with a couple of my coworkers, and we're going to meet up at different walking trails and
Oh,
kind of
that'd
go
be
for
good.
little hikes and stuff. So we all met up, and we all have COVID bellies.
Hmm.
So um,
Yeah, I got one too.
we're, yeah, we're just like, we were hungry, I guess.
Mm,
Um, and it's weird because I feel like I work in a space where I'm constantly trying to check on other people and their mental health and making sure that they're okay. And in a way, I don't feel down, but I do feel like I went through a bout of depression, but I dealt with it in different ways. Like I've
yeah.
noticed my sleeping patterns. I'm sleeping a lot throughout the day. I take
Oh,
naps
good.
now and different things. And so for me to really self check and say, well, am I taking a nap because I'm actually tired or I just want a nap?
Hmm.
Or is what's going on in the midst of me feeling like I need to just be laying here as
Hmm.
opposed to doing something productive?
Do you
Or
think that you
sleeping, huh?
do you think that you, you think that work from home situations will become more permanent?
I do believe. I think that's the way of the future,
Hmm.
anyways, is
Hmm.
working remotely. A lot of our jobs provide us with laptops and everything that is essential for us to do our job, no matter where we're at.
Hmm.
Um, Personally, I feel like some businesses would benefit more and get more out of their employees if they allow that option. That's something that I feel like it can either be a part of an initial job description or part of the negotiation of it,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
I do feel like the work life balance is a lot better. I can have a webinar or a conference and have dinner cooking at the same time,
Mhm.
or had thrown a load to wash, and and
Yeah.
then I'm down here writing a report. So it's um, if a job really wants to say there's a work life balance, I do believe that having an option to have either, 1 or 2 days at home and working remote, or giving the flexibility to flex your day in the office to work remotely, as long as your work is getting done, I don't think that they shouldn't care. Um,
I think it's like you're right. As long as the production is getting done, even on the level of physical work, you know what I'm saying? Like I don't really like uh, like I work with an insurance company, right? And
mhm,
so their numbers are pretty much the same as it is in office, as it is with
mhm,
us working from home. And then, I do have to go in sometimes for some physical things. But in the talks and discussions, as long as the volumes are getting done, um, the 5-day work week, as far as the
mhm,
future is concerned, may be different. Maybe people can make the same compensation by going in 3 days a week and maybe dealing with some sort of conference calls and stuff like that the other 2 days.
mhm.
I think that would really um, be great. And I think that's kind of a move into the right direction. First of all, corporations will save enormous costs because they don't have to deal with the maintenance of an entire floor or floors. You know what I'm saying? In some cases. Um, it's a little bit uh, interesting because there is a camaraderie, but when you look at the balance of spending more time at the job than with your family and stuff like that,
Mhm.
it's very kind of interesting how those things can balance themselves out. You know what I mean? So
Yes, I agree also. I also feel like oftentimes when I have my work schedule, what I need to get done for the week,
Mhm.
I can realistically, I can do that within like the whole week's worth of stuff within one work day
Mhm.
if
Mhm.
I had at it.
Yeah.
If I wanted to like pace myself, I can have it done within 2 work days.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, I was talking with my boss and we were discussing how we felt that um, making our time cards for the hourly employees be more
Mhm.
task oriented versus hourly timesheets,
Mhm.
where we talk about like, the different areas that we actually work in within our position. And like, you just type in like, so for me, I have outreach, right?
Mhm.
Because I work with high school kids. So I can write like an initial or put new recruits
Mhm.
or put, J L and
Mhm.
put like new resources for a new job or and it's more task oriented and show that like you worked on things because we're as a people we've learned to be multitaskers, and
Mhm.
so trying to actually timesheet everything like I worked with this person for 24 minutes,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it just doesn't work. And
Yeah.
so that's something that we were trying to be more forward thinking about is how can we maximize the time that we're doing. And she even cut down our work day from an 8-hour day to just for us to have our phones available for the 8 hours that we're open.
Mhm.
And then, but your physical work, if you physically worked on things for at least 4 hours throughout the day, you don't have to be on your computer because the computer time is not best for you either. So
Yeah.
it's,
Yeah.
she's been really open to try to find ways to make things work for us
Yeah.
and make it, like I said, more task oriented versus us sitting at the computer for 8 hours and trying to figure out what can we possibly do because um, just in my field, and I feel with a few of my peers that work in other fields, we
Mhm.
all say like we could get all our work done in like 2 hours, 3 hours.
Yeah. Yeah.
We don't. No one needs to really be at work 8 full hours to get their day's worth of work done. And I also feel like this time is allowing people to work on things that they may have wanted to work on or had
Yeah.
ideas about and try to explore. And the people who may have experienced being laid off or had those poor experiences and having issues with getting unemployment, they're getting creative on how to make money,
Yeah. Yeah.
and how to do things. And I feel like companies are going to have an issue with trying to hire people because I think this is going to be a really big boom of self-employment.
Yeah. A lot of people are going to be, like you mentioned, becoming entrepreneurs. In some ways, actually, when the Spanish influenza hit after World War II and all that sort of thing, um, that was how we got some of the major companies that we did now. These people, there's this fallacy in thinking, I mean, JP Morgan was kind of set up, Morgan Stanley at that time. But other than that, like as far as the department stores and everything else that came along with that age, those were people who were broke. I'm saying who were like,
Hmm.
look, I got this idea, and now we have Sears department stores.
Hmm.
These are some of the things that came out at that time. So now, in the same manner that we have a lot of uh, uh, we're able to deal with the disease differently than they were back then because we're more aware. We have social distancing, we have Zoom. So there's a lot of different things that generation didn't have, but they still survived that we have today. I'm pretty sure that a lot more entrepreneurs, a lot more businesses should be coming out the box. You know what I'm saying? A lot more people's dreams. And one thing that occurs out of all of this is because I think as far as time spent by themselves, this is the most time people have with themselves. For the first couple of weeks, they had to purge the demons out because they had to deal with their own worries and frustrations. And then after that,
Hmm.
it became time like, you know what? If I did have to move on, which we all do one day, what would I want to be known for? What did I, let me make that happen. You know what I'm saying? I think that's one of the positive effects. I mean, it's been so much, um, hmm, it's been so much crisis going on at this time. But one of the positive things is w- uh, considering all the people that really reach down deep inside themselves and were able to pull out something that they want to pursue. You know what I mean? So,
Right.
yeah, I think that's excellent.
No, most definitely. And I encourage people to like go with your ideas and try something new.
Hmm.
Like the few things I've been trying new, I've been putting them on like little apps
Hmm.
that you can put your own little products on and things. And for me to just kind of see and test the water, and I've been surprised, like pleasantly surprised with the people who are interested in my little things,
Wow, wow.
and I definitely was underselling.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
it was just because I wanted to experiment, like, you
Hmm.
know, who's really going to find interest in my product versus, all the name brand products, then versus all the other people who's making the exact same thing that I'm probably making, and what's going to make me stand out.
Hmm.
And sure enough, I made some test samples and I posted it on a local app, and people started hitting my app up. So I'm
Hmm.
like, oh, okay, like this is interesting. Let's see what happens here.
Yeah,
Um,
I think you know, you
so
have you. I mean, knowing you, um, because we talk pretty much every day. A lot of the stuff that you come up with is, I know you always brewing something. You got something in the kitchen cooking or whatever. You know what I
yeah.
mean? And I think that you have what it is that people desire. There was one thing that I did learn that was very important in doing the music reviews, because that's like sort of like it's one of the businesses I have, right? The music review
Right.
thing. And what one of the things that was extremely amazing out of that is, depending on where my mood was, and this was totally blew me away. I would get like, okay, so I have random promoters coming at me, and they'll come at me with rap, country, western, rock music. But here's the thing I noticed: based on where my mind is at for that day and how I feel, all of those promoters would hit me with the same genre. So, in other words, I would get from different people 4 country western songs in one day, exactly four. The next day, 4 rock and roll, depending on how I feel. Sometimes it will stretch for a week, and then depending on what I'm thinking, like, okay, I'm gonna get a lot of orders today, and then I would get a lot of orders today. You know what I'm saying? Like, I know it's like how I think. Now, if I there was one time I remember where it got a little bit weird with the reviews. I think I had mentioned it to you when we were talking. But at that same time, I was going through some sort of internal conflict,
Hmm.
and it was affecting everything else. So I learned, like, yo, you know what? Let me not consider some things and consider those things that can help me grow more successfully. You know what
Hmm.
I'm saying? And as long as you put that out there, I mean, every day is a struggle. You know what I'm saying? But every day doesn't have to be. You know what I'm saying? You have what it takes. You have a lot of good ideas. You have well spoken. So I'm expecting that you'll be in that multi-million dollar bracket in
Oh, one day.
2022. Yeah,
Yes. I just want to be comfortable.
yeah.
Um, I just feel like um this has been a time for me. I feel like I'm growing in a way where this pause in time,
Hmm.
being forced to kind of slow down and be home and
Hmm.
like not have too many outside activities I can participate in and all this other distraction,
Yeah.
that I was able to realize um, I had this long term goal,
Hmm.
and all the little things, little projects I do and I share with you,
Hmm.
it seems like there are all these little things that actually would go towards that long term goal.
Hmm.
But I never really get to sit down and focus on because I'm always gone. Like, I would leave my home at 7 in the morning, and by the time I'm coming home and trying to close the day, it's 7:30, 8 o'clock in the evening.
Wow.
And
Wow.
so it's in between that time I might have came home for an hour and been able to kind of like straighten up something, but then I gotta, my daughter goes to work or she has after school activities, and so being a mom and working,
Yeah.
it's by the time we come home for the close, it's time to take a shower and take our
Hmm.
butts to bed because I have to start over again.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so this is giving me time to sit down and say, I've wanted to do this,
Hmm.
and I've seen other people do it. Where the hell they get the time to do it, I have no clue. But
Hmm.
now I have some time, so maybe I can explore
Hmm.
this.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
and I've been gradually making way for me to have designated time to do that. And so, like, for the people who's watching, I would say, even if it's just like 30 minutes a day, like, put on your phone a designated 30 minutes. That
Hmm.
is like self-care time or self-time for you to do the one thing that if you could do any job in the world, or the one thing you just desire to do, that's that 30 minutes that you focus only on that.
Definitely.
So
Yeah.
even if it's just writing about it or taking a picture, um, I am very visual. I'm always screenshotting images of things that I want, things that I want to do, or things that are interesting to me, and I
Hmm.
put them in folders. And I know people say make what are those called? Vision boards.
Hmm.
And I used to make vision boards when I was younger, but you can't really make vision boards in a house. It makes your house look tacky at the end of the day. Yes, it does. So,
Yeah.
creating vision boards in your photo albums, or I guess Pinterest could be like a vision board page or
Hmm.
something. But having something you can reference back your thoughts and then kind of come back to, because, like I said, my long term things that I've wanted has the things that I'm doing now definitely play a role in my bigger picture of what I wanted in the future.
Yeah.
And so it is allowing me to take a step towards that direction and to do it confidently, because I'm starting small. I'm starting with just one thing, and
Hmm.
I'm still doing my job and still working, because oftentimes um we always think that in order for us to become an entrepreneur and become self-employed, we need to like stop working for the man and then just
Yeah.
like be this entrepreneur, and it's
Yeah.
not always about that. Sometimes it's
Yeah.
having a little hobby but making time for that hobby,
Yeah. Time to
and things
build
like that.
too.
So I would say to the audience who's watching, like, take 30 minutes for yourself and
Hmm.
really and be honest with that 30 minutes too, because
Hmm.
I have some people that I do know who would take a 30 minutes of silence, and they wouldn't be able to be silent and deal with that 30 minutes
Hmm.
because they're not completely honest with themselves and where
Yeah.
they're at and what's going on. So that might be the 30 minutes you need to do, is to kind of get that kink worked out,
Out the way. Yeah.
um yeah, most definitely. um when it comes to venturing off into starting your own business, how do you feel about um people who look for like investors or people to invest in your dream? Or is it something that you feel like it's you should ride alone and then the people will come?
Um, mm, that's an interesting topic because sometimes, well, I would say this: if you have investors, and I've seen businesses grow from investors. I have a friend of mine who wanted to start like a set of dance clubs in Thailand. Like he was like, man, this place would be crazy if it had like a lot of dance clubs, sort of like how Tijuana has clubs in
Mm-hmm.
Mexico. And so he got investors. He didn't put no money into it. He just pulled the idea together. And now this guy is sitting pretty pretty. He's all right. He's a multimillionaire. Um, it depends on the. I would say this: if a person's going to pull investors, they shouldn't be um, around the way people. It shouldn't be like friends and stuff like. You want to avoid that. First of all, if you have an idea, sometimes people tag around you as soon as the idea is said, so they can participate in the profits and really not really put anything into it. You know what I'm saying? But I think that if you um,
Mhm.
can compose a business scheme, you'll find people who will be interested in investing. But it should ultimately be on a business level. It shouldn't be on a level of I want to be down. Like that's not business. You know, it should definitely be on a straight level. To me personally, um, I know my character a little bit more over the past,
Mhm.
I would say, 5 years. You know, so I kind of know that to keep a circle extremely close and to keep it extremely closed. Um, if
Mhm.
someone's not a family member, really, if I didn't really grow up with them, there's certain things that we could do, you know what I'm saying? Because that's how life is. But as far as like, this impeccable trust, I don't think that occurs unless it's people that you grew up with or someone who's been on the front lines with you. You don't deal with people just out of the blue. I definitely don't do stuff like that. And I'm a very friendly and open person, but I'm also aware of a lot of different things that occur growing up in New York and stuff like that. So, and I've had experiences like that where people like, hey man, let's do this and that and stuff like that. I remember once, I'll give you an example. There was this guy who was he was a street spiritualist, if you understand, right?
Mhm.
And he was like, "Yo, man, co- I guess what people call it conscious." And he was like, "Yeah, man, I want to get this building, and we can all get this building." So he kept, like I would see him in my travels through work, and I kind of knew him through acquaintances and stuff like that. So I says, okay, I'm gonna see how far this is gonna go. So every time he's showing me stuff about this building, we're having meetings and this, that, and the other. And at the time, I didn't really have time to be having no meetings. I had to deal with other things
Mhm.
with family and stuff like that. I was interested, but the way the person presented themselves, I mean, you don't have to be uh, like a rich person because most times when you pushing off your idea, you aren't. But how he was organized was just like completely eternal. So one day I asked him, I said, okay, you've been talking about this building for quite some time. Can I see your business plan? I never heard from that dude again. I never heard from him again.
Well, and see, and that's something that I feel is a little outdated
Hmm.
because, like, technically, they'll want you to have a business plan, and a,
Hmm.
a, a
Hmm.
professional business plan can be anywhere from 10 pages to 100 pages. Like,
Yeah. I
with
mean,
all this research and all of these things.
right,
And that's something that I always felt semi discouraged with because the type of work that I dream of doing
hmm,
is not something you can necessarily quantify an outline of. It's kind of like I can give you maybe a 3-page report of what I
right,
want to
right,
do.
right,
And if I were to look into an investor, they probably would find that insufficient, you know,
right,
because it's not super detailed and it's vague and it's, but sometimes there's work that is, this is what it is. And I can't go any more detail with it because you just need to see the end result.
right.
And so to find someone to believe into that aspect of people, I feel is
I
I
think
feel that it's hard
right.
and it's not fair all the time.
Right. I think if a person builds their constituency around them up, then that's possible to evade that. However, if you know, if you're dealing with people who are ultimately strangers, first there has to be some protocol of agreement
Oh
before
yeah.
moving forward. So that's why kind of like the business plan is essential for that sort of environment. But if you're dealing with something that you see that no one else can see, then what you do is you build up your constituency. You see what I'm saying? And then people like, you know what? She's doing this. I mean, like when you look at, let's say, people in the urban experience, quote unquote, these dudes wasn't walking around with business plans. You know what I'm saying? It's just that they were able to get through certain chambers and get to the people that they need to meet. You know what
Right.
I'm saying? So that's a, probably the most effective way to begin. But when you're talking about, you know, meeting with people, like let's say in this case with a building and stuff, and this person's going through all this stuff with paperwork and stuff. If this dude has a briefcase full of papers and most of them are sticking out and has no business plan, see, then I know what it is already, right? But if a person's coming to me and they've demonstrated certain things, then that's another discussion. You know what I'm saying? But ultimately, for me, I have to have some sort of communion with the person, some sort of affinity with the person to make
Mm.
those efforts grow. You know what I'm saying? You know, because here's the thing with all of that. The thing is how much influence do you want over seeing those things happen? And the people that are with you, are they going to be partakers in that influence, or are they going to support the influence that you're trying to cast? That's the huge difference that has to be, because for myself, like I know with certain things I can get to an affinity with the individual with. But other things, if I don't see it out, it gets weird to me. You see what I'm saying? And then I used to think like, man, why are these people acting like this? You know, like to get back into a little bit of my past, but I don't want to digress too much. There were times where I had opportunities that basically all I had to do was just study and apply myself, and I didn't have no investment money. I can make something happen, and that's what I did. So a lot of times, if someone's riding on the bus with me, I'll be like, "Yo, like, there's a couple of people riding on the bus that these are dudes I can see like they have some potential, but they still keep messing it up." It's like, I don't say anything because, you know, it's they have to live those lessons. But it's just like, yo, man, you know, what are you guys doing? So then I wonder, like, why are these people not working like in my ship? You know what I'm saying? Like, why are they acting lackadaisical? Because it's not their vision. So you have to have people around you that have the same vision as you do. Otherwise, it's going to be frustrating. You see what I'm saying? Some people don't want to be a business owner. You see what I'm saying? Some people just want to be like in the cut, and you need to have people who want to feel that scale and feel comfortable feeling that scale. You see what I'm saying? A lot of times with the guys I know, they were all trying to get to a certain level, and having them in the same boat ain't gonna happen. You know
Right.
what I'm saying? Yeah, yeah. But I mean, it's very well doable. You know what I'm saying? You know, in a lot of different ways. It's just bringing everything together. You know, so.
Um, okay, well, in closing, um, what is something that you would like to leave the audience with, or just something to go off with until our next video?
Well, one thing I want to leave the audience with, and it's something that I'm coming to the realization of, is that the world, and there's one thing, let me just backtrack a little bit because I just want to make sure this is very clear. And there's one thing I learned in Corbett, and it came a little bit through distress, and that is that the world is a small place. Unfortunately, when you look at the governance over the COVID-19 phenomena, it was like every state was doing their own, like, yo, this system, it ain't that tough. You know what I'm saying? Like the breakthrough, because it's not, it's man-made. You know what I'm saying? So whatever you want to do, you can definitely put your foot in the boat. You know what I'm saying? Because it's not, a lot of it is mental. I
Mm-hmm.
work with a lot of dudes who come from various different backgrounds in the urban experience, and some of the times, because I lived in, you know, two different worlds, and some of the times some of the things I hear is like, man, you know, like, why people say stuff like that, you know, like now at this day and age, and a lot of it is because they're not aware of their own potential. You know what I'm saying? So be aware of your own potential. Don't let nothing stop you. And here's the thing that I did learn from interacting with people who may have had a different interest than I did on my ship. This is one very important thing, and probably the most important thing I learned, is that work with those who have the same interests as you do at heart. You know what I'm saying? And you could do. Here's the most important thing is that a lot of times in people's experience, especially people of color, they look at things from how they were treated. You know what I'm saying? Like, oh man, this person, so you got to go out there and you got to practically jerk people to make it. And that's not true. Everything has its place. And under the will of heaven and earth, I believe that even those things, like if you dealing with monotheism, one God is all good, which I don't think never really existed, another dude's all bad. But when you're dealing with the old ways, the seven planets, even war is a divine action. So in some cases, in the casualties of war, that's part of divine action. You understand what I'm saying? But but if you express it in an undivine action, your plans will totter. See what I'm saying? So if when you get in tune with that force and you see like, man, I'm gonna make this thing fly, and you in the grain of that, you don't have to war. But if war is part of that, then you do that. If compassion is part of that, then do that. If love is part of that, then do that. Because that's how the law and the mind of life moves. You understand what I'm saying? So if you imitate that, nothing could be forbidden from you. You know what I'm saying? It's all about where your mind is at, and water always seeks its own level. You understand? So internally, your level is going to match what's inside of you. People don't want to hear that because none of us are where we want to be at in some ways. But that always gives us reason to alchemate ourselves internally. And it's not difficult, like you mentioned, like a picture board, but we can use our imagination for that. Just even for like 5 seconds, like, man, let me see myself here. And then do what we have to do. You know what I'm saying? But as long as we keep striving for it, it's going to cause the people around us and life to be better than what it is at the time that we're dealing with this. And that's what I got in closing. You know what I'm saying? But it's a pleasure and an honor to finally get this thing off the ground with
I
family. You know what
know.
I'm saying? It's I mean, it's still amazing. The family experience is just totally something dynamic. You know what I'm saying? That's a whole other dynamic. But I'm happy that we were able to finally get together and start this thing up. And I think it'll definitely be a successful venture. You know, there's so much to discuss now, and I think just having it like on a practical level is just tremendous. You know what I'm saying?
Definitely. And for the audience who is experiencing this with us at this time, we would love to be able to at some point have an active audience so that we can interact with you guys and answer questions live or do Q&As or let you guys even come in and give your point of views. So thank you for taking your time to share with us the time that you shared. I don't know how many minutes it's been.
Like
Um,
an hour.
and
Yeah,
hope that you guys come back. You hope you share with someone. Um, this is going to be on our channel and I think both of our personal pages as well. So feel free to subscribe and share, and we'll be back soon.
peace.
Bye.
Let me just end this.